Okay, students, this is lecture number 2 regarding the course Romantic and Victorian Poetry. And the topic for today's lecture is the history of French Revolution, a brief and specific contextual background of the poetry of Romantic and Victorian eras. So let's move towards the outline of today's lecture. First of all, we'll discuss about what French Revolution is. Then we'll talk about the Romantic poetry, then the major writers and their major works. Then we'll discuss about the Victorian poetry that started from 1832 and ended at 1901, and then the major writers and their major works. So this is all about the timeline. Moving towards the French Revolution. What was the French Revolution? The French Revolution was a period of time in France when the people overthrew the monarchy and took control of the government. The storming of the Bastille prison took place. Then, when did it take place? The French Revolution lasted for 10 years, from 1789 to 1799. It began on July 14, 1789, when revolutionaries stormed a prison called the Bastille. The revolution came to an end in 1799 when a general named Napoleon overthrew the revolutionary government and established the French consulate with Napoleon as leader. Now moving towards the French states. Before the French Revolution, the people of France were divided into social groups called states. The first estate included the clergy, the church leaders. The second estate included the nobles, and the third estate included the commoners. Most of the people were the members of the third estate. The third estate paid most of the taxes, while the nobility lived lives of luxury and got all the high-ranking jobs. The next one, revolutionary government. The French government was in constant turmoil throughout the revolution. At the start of the revolution, representatives from the third estate established the National Assembly, where they demanded that King Louis XVI give them certain rights. This group soon took control of the country. They changed name over time to the Legislative Assembly and later to the National Convention. After the reign of the Terror, a new government was formed called the Directory. The Directory ruled until Napoleon took rule. The next one is Reign of Terror. The darkest period of the French Revolution is called the Reign of Terror, which lasted from 1793 to 1794. During this time, a man named Robespierre led the National Convention and the Committee of Public Safety. He wanted to stamp out any opposition to the revolution, so he called for a rule of terror. Laws were passed that said anyone suspected of the treason could be arrested and executed by guillotine. Thousands of people were executed, including Queen Mary and many of the Robespierre's political rivals. Moving towards the outcome, the French Revolution completely changed the social and political structure of France. It put an end to the French monarchy, feudalism, and took control power from the Catholic churches. It brought new ideas to Europe, including liberty and freedom for the commoners, as well as the abolishment of slavery and the rights of the women. Although the revolution ended with the rise of the Napoleon, the ideas and reforms did not die. These new ideas continued to influence Europe and helped to shape many of the Europe's modern-day governments. Now we are moving towards the Romantic Age that started from 1798 till 1832. We have already discussed the Romantic Age in our first lecture. Now we are adding some more details over here just to get the better understanding of the Romantic era. This age began in 1798 with the first edition of Wordsworth's lyrical ballads and ended with the first Reformation Act of 1832. This period is also called the revival of Romanticism because the romantic ideals of the Elizabethan period revived during these years. Lyrical ballads brought a great change in literature, both in subject and style. Instead, aristocratic people, style, common people, and common language were preferred. The important events of the age were after the French Revolution, it was accepted that every individual was free and equally important. Small industries disappeared and large industries with huge capital developed. Machines were widely introduced in coal and iron mines, which multiplied the production. Steam engines were used in ships and trains. The train was first introduced in 1830. Industrialization created lots of slums, child labors, and labor problems. The traditional social pattern started changing. Ireland was united with England in 1801. The use of machines in fields and industries made a large number of women jobless. Of them, many became either readers or writers. In 1840, the penny post was introduced. Penny post is a system of carrying letters at a charge of just 1 penny. Now let's move towards the major writers and their major works. One of the major writers of the Romantic era is William Wordsworth, 1770 till 1850. And the two most important works of this writer are Lyrical Ballads, which was published in 1798, and The Prelude, that was published in 1850. The next famous romantic poet is Samuel Taylor Coleridge, 1772 till 1834. His most important work is Biographia Literaria, which he wrote in 1817. The next important work is The Rime of the Ancient Mariner and some other poems as well. Then comes Lord Byron, 1788 till 1824. His important works are Don John, 1824, which he wrote in 1824, and The Vision of Judgment, which he wrote in 1822. Then comes P.B. Shelley, 1792 till 1822. His most important work is Prometheus Unbound, which he wrote in 1820. Another important work is Adonais, 1821, and other poems as well. And another important writing of P.B. Shelley is A Defense of Poetry, which was written in 1820 but it was published in 1840. Then comes John Keats. The most important work of John Keats is Endymion, 1818. Then comes Hypersion, 1820, Odes and the other poems later. So John Keats, he died in a very early age, at the age of 25, from 1795 till 1821. So this is his lifetime. Then we are moving towards a dramatist whose name is Jane Austen. She is a well-known novelist, not the dramatist, sorry, the novelist. An anti-romantic novelist in the Romantic Age. She is called so because of her stern attitude against the youthful passion. Some of the important novels of Jane Austen are Pride and Prejudice, 1797, Sense and Sensibility, 1797 till 98. It was published in that year, and Mansfield Park in 1814 and Emma in 1816. All of these novels are well known and famous novels of Jane Austen. Moving towards Charles Lamb, 1775 till 1834. His important work includes the Essays of Ella, which was published in 1823. The last Essays of Ella, which was published in 1833. So these are the important works of Charles Lamb. Moving towards William Hazlitt, 1778 till 1830, a critic, the spirit of the age. This is one of his famous works which he has published in 1825, and the dramatic literature of the age of Elizabeth, which was published in 1820. Now we are moving towards the literary features of this period. This period is known as the second creative period of the English literature, the Elizabethan age being the first. The triumph of individualism and democracy in politics brought romanticism in literature. The literature of this age is largely poetical. It is the golden age of the lyrics. The characteristics of this period are high imagination, subjectivity, medievalism, supernaturalism, revolutionary zeal, primitive or spontaneity, excessive interest in nature. This age has a number of women novelists and a number of good critics. Okay students, now we are going to discuss about the Victorian period. As the Romantic period ended, the Victorian period started. The Victorian period started as the Romantic period ended, and it started from 1832 and ended at 1901. This age is named after the Queen Victoria, who reigned over England from 1873 till 1901. It should be noticed that though Queen Victoria come to power in 1837, the Victorian period began in 1832, 5 years before the accession of the Queen Victoria, because the literary features of the age became obvious after 1832. The 12 years from 1848 to 1860 of this age is called the age of pre-Raphaelites, because the artists of the time followed the art forms used before the period of Raphael, 1483 till 1520. The Italian artists D. J. Rossetti, W. H. Hunt, and J. Mallis formed the group, and later on Christina Rossetti, W. Morris, and A. Swinburne joined them. Originally, it was a movement for the painters, but eventually these ideals took the shape of a literary movement. Medievalism, symbolism, sensuousness, truthfulness, and simplicity are the main features of pre-Raphaelites. Till 1901 of this period is called the age of aestheticism and decadence, because there was a fall and decay of the Victorian spirit and standard in those years. In reaction against the Victorian moral obsession, it was held that art should have its end in itself, which lies in its beauty and formal perfection. The important events of age were the First Reformation Act in 1832, the Second Reformation Act in 1867, and the Third Reformation Act in 1884 gave voting rights to every male. In 1833, slaves were declared free. Chimney Sweeps Act in 1840 and Factory Act in 1833 prohibited child labor. Mechanisms of railways and ships was improved, which helped develop commerce and industry and thus brought material affluence. There was a significant progress of women during this time. Agricultural-based society was disintegrated as a result of the development of industry. This had a strong effect on the rural people. The theory of evolution and the concept of communism changed the traditional views of life. The Fabian Society was founded in 1883 to avoid violence in class struggle. J. B. Shaw was one of the members of this society. Now we are moving towards the major poets and their works, the major poets that actually belongs to the Victorian age. So number one is Alfred Lord Tennyson. He is best known for his melodious language. He has written poems, he has written Maud and the other poems. Then comes Robert Browning, that is famous for his dramatic monologues. He has written dramatic lyrics, Men and Women, and Dramatis Personae. Then comes Matthew Arnold. He has mentioned meditative and melancholic attitude in his essays in criticism, culture, and anarchy, and some other poems as well. Then comes Edward Fitzgerald. He has translated Rubaiyat in 1859 actually. Then comes Charles Dickens. He has written Pickwick Papers in 1836, Oliver Twist in 1873, David Copperfield in 1850, Black House in 1852, A Tale of Two Cities in 1859, and Great Expectations in 1861. Then comes William Makepeace Turkey. He has written Vanity Fair, and then later on he has written The Virgins. Then comes Emily Bronte. She is the one who has written Wuthering Heights. Then comes another important writer, George Eliot. George Eliot has mentioned The Mill on the Floss, Adam Bede, Silas Mariner, and The Waif of Revlon. Then comes Thomas Hardy, a novelist and a poet. He has mentioned The Return of Native, The Mayor of Casterbridge, and The Test of de Eurovilles. Then comes John Stuart Mill. He has written On Liberty in 1859. Then comes Thomas Begington. He has mentioned The History of England in 1847 till 1869. Then comes Charles Robert Darwin. He has mentioned The Origin of Species in 1859 and The Descent of Man in 1871. And the last one is Karl Marx. He has mentioned The Day Capital 1867. So these are the major writers of the Victorian era. So girls, this is all about the writers, their works, the Romantic era and the Victorian era. This is all about lecture number 2. Thank you so very much.